Okay, welcome folks to an edition here of the After Show. And I must say, as I begin this episode, wow, what a show. As I've seen a lot of concerts in my time, and it's very rare when we see a concert kind of this magnitude. I really wasn't expecting something this grand. The show I'm talking about here, none other than Deep Purple, and they also had Yes on the bill and opener Hannah Wickland. We caught the show at the Saratoga Springs, New York, there at the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, also known as SPAC. Um, got to see this great show, and man, can't stop thinking about it. Here we are, days after the fact. We caught the performance on Wednesday, the 4th in September here. And man, these guys are simply on fire. And sad part of it is their tour is almost over here. So there's not really any dates left in the U.S. where you can catch them. I guess you'll have to wait and see if they announce some more dates for hopefully next year. We're keeping our fingers crossed, but nothing's guaranteed, obviously. Um, yeah, these guys, man, what a set. They played like for 110 minutes. At their ages, that's just unbelievable to put on a performance this powerful. Um, Look at the amazing band. You got Ian Gillan on vocals, Roger Glover on bass, and of course Ian Pace on drums. And those three are three of the remaining members of the Mark II era. And man, it's nothing against Steve Morse, but man, oh man, this band, it just seems like they're playing on a whole new level here with Simon McBride on guitar. Man, what a performance! This guy just what a performance by him. I just was amazed at his technical skill and how phenomenal he sounded on those songs. Um, One of the weird things was that the songs, the selection of songs at least that they played, with over 20, about 23 albums worth of material, they kind of focused it all. There was a good handful from Machine Head and In Rock, and there was a track from Now What, and even the Battle Rages On got a track this time around. A few covers, and of course, the main thing, the reason why they're out there touring is for this new album, Equals One. Um, and they played four songs off the album there, which was pretty impressive. The album is definitely one of the strongest Deep Purple albums in quite some time, no doubt. If you haven't heard it yet, very highly recommended. It's definitely in my race there going for the album of the year this year. I would definitely say it's right in that talk for the top album, no doubt. Just the performance on that album alone is just amazing. To make an album like that at this point in their career, simply stunning. So yeah, so the band themselves seemed really tight. Everything seemed really good. And it's hard to believe Ian Pace up there playing for as long as he does at his age. You don't see a lot of drummers playing these long, extensive sets nowadays. But he's he's a freak of nature, still up there performing, and obviously he's the only remaining member from the first era of Deep Purple. Uh, these guys are the pioneers of heavy metal, and there's no doubt that that's what they were letting people know in concert that night. It was just simply amazing. They are not a nostalgia act for anybody that thinks that they are. You're fooling yourself, just because think about it nowadays, how many bands have all their original members in them anymore? If you start going through just some of the bigger bands of the 90s alone, most of those guys are all gone. A lot of the top 10 bands, except with the few exceptions, Green Day's one, obviously, those three guys have been together the whole time. But you look at all those other big bands that sold a lot of albums in the 90s there, just the singers left, and they basically just rebuilt the band around a singer. I mean, hardly any original members left in hardly any of these bands out there nowadays. So for people to come in and start talking, well, they don't have the original members, this, that, and everything else. They're a glorified cover band, quote, quote. No, this is Deep Purple's far from a glorified cover band. I challenge you to go see them in concert and tell me otherwise. And the only way you're going to do that is, obviously if they tour again, but you have to actually see the concert to believe it. It's just one of those great performances, and I can't say enough about it. And another thing too was Yes. I think a lot of people have written them off. You got two kind of like two versions of Yes out there with John Anderson and his band Geeks, and then you got the Steve Howe led version of the what they call Yes right now, and that was the version that was on stage Wednesday night. And yeah, I think a lot of unjust criticism lies towards Yes. They're out there doing what they love to do, and it's not like they got a bunch of no names in the band. I mean, think about it. You got Steve Howe, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. You got Jeff Downs, one of the greatest keyboard players in the history of music, who also was in Yes a long time before. He was in Asia. He's a pedigree. I mean, he's got accolade after accolade there that you can go down the line with Jeff Downs. You got Billy Sherwood on bass, who was handpicked by Chris Squire to take over for him. And, he was in Yes before as well. So, I mean, these guys just aren't, guys that are nobodies out there coming in, filling in for people. These guys are legitimate musicians. And, I really get sick of hearing the bad rap that a lot of these guys get. And, think about John Davison, the singer, the vocalist. He does so much, a lot of percussion on that stage, and he does everything up to the best of his ability out there. And I'll tell you, this show that night here was probably the best sounding I've ever heard him in concert. And I thought the show was flawless. Jay Shellen on drums, another guy who kind of was just like, he used to tour with him before, kind of filling in here and there. They brought him in full time, obviously, after the passing of Alan White. I think he commended himself quite well there, handled himself just fine behind the drums. It's all about integrity, the quality of the performance. And I thought Yes was on top of their game. Obviously they haven't played in a shed in a while, so they figure they're in the middle of their classic Tales of Yes tour, which started last year, where they're playing a lot more rare songs and longer songs in concert. I happened to catch a show last year, and I thought that was really good. And then then they come up with this tour here, and man, these guys have really put their act together. And I thought they were even better this time around when I seen them for sure. And you look at the set list they handpicked for this show. I thought they did a great job, with the song selection because, it's not easy when you're playing to the shed people. You're playing for more for the common fans that maybe heard of you, maybe not. So they kind of tended to gear a little bit more towards the songs, that people were a little bit more familiar with, but yet they still played like Machine Messiah. Going for the One was a gem, just great stuff. And of course, the encore roundabout, and you got to save the best for last, and that was Starship Trooper. Great song, great performance, and I think these guys ended on a great note that night, setting up Deep Purple just fine to come up and simply just knock it right out of the park. So, it's a shame that this tour didn't have a lot more dates in the area, within driving distance of Buffalo here. But just a great show, and I highly recommend if either of these two bands make it to your area next time around, whenever that will be, you got to see them, because you just never know what the future holds. And if they're still putting on shows this good, and I just don't say this about everybody, but if you're putting on shows this good, you definitely got to catch these guys. They're highly recommended, and that's what my take is walking away from this. I was just felt so honored to have been able to just not only cover the show, but to be able to see the show and just as a fan and a reviewer and just everything. It was just a treat to go out and catch a show of this magnitude. And that's what we got to say about this Deep Purple and Yes out at the Saratoga Performing Arts Center. Just a definite great show and highly recommended. Stay tuned for many more of our episodes coming up down the road. We're going to be doing a lot more of these after shows and stay tuned.